Good evening. I'm quite pleased to introduce our next speaker. He's been associated with Brookville Reformed Church for many years as the leader of the Muslim Reform Group, a group that meets regularly here on the campus. Dr. Sultan Abdulhameed arrived at our doorstep, like so many others, because they connected our name, Brookville Reformed Church, part of the Reformed Church in America, with their own need for like-minded Reformed people. And I should clarify that very simply by saying they would drive by and see the sign, Reformed Church, and come in to see us. So the word Reformed has an impact throughout this group tonight. Dr. Hamid and his wife started their life story in Pakistan, passing through England to get their doctorates, and arriving in the United States. Dr. Hamid played a key role in the development of the Islamic Center in Westbury, where he was a member of the Board of Trustees for 10 years and the president for 2 years. He implemented many reforms, especially in facilitating women's participation in the mosque governance, developing a program for adult education, rationalizing the Sunday school curriculum, prohibiting the practice of polygamy, having a campaign against domestic violence, and making the affairs of the mosque consistent with New York Civil Code. He was asked to leave the mosque because of his insistence on further reform. Dr. Abdulhameed is the author of the book, The Quran and the Life of Excellence, a book of commentaries on some of the Quran's verses. This book has been translated and published in Indonesia. I read this book twice, and I find so much in it of interest and not at all contradictory to what I know. He is a valued member of our multi-faith campus group, offering insightful suggestions that often resolve questions that we have, questions coming out of our differences. But he comes up with a simple, alternative solution that is different and satisfactory and works. I could go on and say quite a bit more, I'd like to, but I'll simply close by saying that, as with Reverend Mickey, with Dr. Abdulhameed, we are going to, again tonight, hear some things we didn't expect to learn. May you join me now and introduce my friend, Sultan Abdulhameed.
Thank you, Branch, for that warm introduction. So let me begin by saying that Islam at its origin and by its intent is a reform in religion. It began with Prophet Muhammad, who was born in Arabia in the year 570 of the Christian era. The majority of Arabs practiced idol worship, although some Jews and Christians were also present in that society. Prophet Muhammad was dismayed by the spiritual and social stagnation of his people and wanted to bring change. Starting at the age of 40 and continuing for the next 23 years, he received divinely inspired revelations that guided him to true faith and how it can be applied to reform and uplift people's lives. These revelations are compiled in what is known as the Quran. The Quran acknowledges and validates all biblical prophets, exhorts social justice and personal responsibility. It teaches that God is one and accessible to everyone, and that this was the teaching of Abraham and all the prophets, including Jesus. Prophet Muhammad believed that what he taught was not a new religion, but a continuation and reform of the previously revealed monotheistic religion. His mission was to convince his fellow Arabs of the truth and the benefits of this teaching. Prophet Muhammad's message reformed and galvanized Arab society. They created a great civilization that was at the forefront of creating knowledge and progress for several centuries, and spread Islam to a large part of the world. However, the purpose of today's meeting is not to describe the virtues of Islam as it was in the past, but to discuss its dismal representation in the world of today and what can be done about it. As Islam spread among diverse people, several scholars felt the need to codify its teachings as inferred from hadith, that is, from descriptions of what was known about the habits of Prophet Muhammad and his companions. These rules are very detailed and about all aspects of life, including not only prayer or fasting, but detailed descriptions of all aspects of life. So I will give you some random examples. There are detailed rules on how to wash yourself and how to bathe, what to eat and what not to eat, conditions under which a woman could go out of the house, rules for borrowing and trading, how different crimes are to be punished, that is the penal code, dress codes for women and men, rules for mustache and beard, and many other rules. These rules became known as the Sharia. In subsequent centuries, imams in mosques preached the view that strict adherence to all the rules of Sharia was a must for Muslims as individuals and also as a society. It came to be believed that Muslims will recover the glory of the time of Prophet Muhammad if we all obeyed the rules of the Sharia. As a result, a long era of conformity began, which resulted in the stagnation of Muslim social and spiritual life. The freezing of thought manifested in a demise of social, scientific, and artistic innovation. The Muslim world became insulated from progress that was being made by the European Reformation. Coming to the present, it is easy to see that the belief that the Sharia be literally followed contributes to social backwardness by causing significant personality distortions among a large number of Muslims. For example, so many people feel inadequate and unworthy because they become convinced that they are not good Muslims, being unable to obey the instruction on the prohibition of music, or paying interest on a mortgage loan, or the need to adopt a child, or to do a long prayer at 5 appointed times every day. Prayer or salat is a big problem because it is perceived only as an outward act. Adherence to format is considered an absolute must for prayer. Every Muslim has to memorize the Arabic words, the correct pronunciation, the body postures and their sequences. Any departure from the prescribed routine is perceived to make a prayer defective and unacceptable to God. Imams teach that it may be better to know the meaning of the words of prayer, but it is not necessary. What matters is that you utter the words with correct Arabic pronunciation. People are taught that reading the Quran without understanding or listening to it without understanding is a virtue and brings blessings. Most large mosques throughout the world and here on Long Island have affiliated memorization schools where children are made to memorize the whole Quran. Its meaning or the need to know its meaning is never discussed. In a few weeks from now, the month of Ramadan will begin. At about 10 p.m., an hour-long prayer service will be organized in every mosque, in which the Imam will rapidly recite through the Quran. It is rapid because the whole book has to be gone through within the month. There is no discussion of what it means. Reciting passages you don't understand dozens of times a day for years and years numbs the mind and dulls consciousness. With absence of meaning, people's minds wander away from the memorized Arabic phrases and they blame themselves for it. Since no help is available, only exhortations that not praying properly is a sin People are afraid to talk about such issues and become more and more confused and paranoid. The sermons in the mosques or their equivalent female dars gatherings in homes try to make people into good Muslims by inducing guilt for not living up to Allah's expectations. Women are made to feel bad for simple things like dressing up to look good or wearing nail polish. The fear and guilt makes them feel anxious, inhibited, repressed, and at times physically sick. The way women are viewed in the Sharia is now a well-known scandal. Why Muslim women cannot pray together with men? Or a female scholar give khutbah and lead prayer? Women are created equal and not as servants to men. The fact is that women tend to have a better ability to be intuitive and relate to deeper feelings. If allowed, they can help make mosques as places of healing and nurture that most people are looking for. The concept that their presence will excite men to distraction is no longer acceptable. Discrimination against women is just one part of the self-imposed suffering. Tens of millions of Muslim people in the world live their lives in guilt and shame simply because they were born with homosexual preferences. In fundamental regimes like Saudi Arabia and Iran, homosexual men are routinely put to death by the state in the name of Islam. In other Muslim countries, they are beaten and abused by